I'm excited about what might happen tonight and what a future will hold for this. But first, we'll have a little bit of Planning Commission business to do, a little housekeeping. First, want to let you know that this is being televised on Hub Cities 25 live, I understand. So you'll be at least on notice of that. And also want to advise you that our remaining commission member is Marty Brubaker, and he has let us know that he's stuck in traffic coming back from Annapolis. I guess he was down there today on the city's business, so he will be with us approximately 7:30, but apparently the traffic was kind of bad coming up on 70 tonight. So I'll move on with the few things that we need to do as a commission, and that is approval of minutes from December the 12th, regular meeting, and January the 9th, workshop meeting.
Make a motion to approve minutes as presented.
I'll second. December 12th.
Was the, thank you. We're working on the 12th first.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any additions or corrections on the minutes from December 12th? All right, we're ready to vote. All is in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
And abstain. And then we have the minutes for January the 9th.
I have a correction on page 8. Second paragraph from the bottom. The neighborhood boundaries follow development. It should be areas instead of eras.
Okay. Where's that again?
It's the second goal from the bottom.
Oh.
Midway through, the neighborhood boundaries follow development areas.
Right there. Any others? See, it was made in second, right? Was there a motion made in second on that?
No.
I need a motion.
I move
now.
for
Thank
approval
you.
of the minutes.
As corrected.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? They pass also. Now we move on to the real purpose of our meeting tonight, and that is a presentation from the consultants hired by the hospital working through Sharon Disk's group. And Kathy, you want to start off and orient everybody. So.
Just want to let folks know what the Planning Commission has received so far in terms of public input. We did hang out 350 door hangers in the area, the residential areas immediately surrounding the neighborhood. We put out a press release and there was an article in the paper on Monday. We received one email response to that article, which was forwarded to the commission. And is it on? Sorry about that. And that comment was, had people considered single-family detached like what was built on the old Hagerstown High School site. And then we also received, we distributed to the commission today, there were 7 postings on the city's Facebook page as of this morning. And then we received a report from activity from Sharon Disk on the WordPress site that they have been updating ever since this project began to provide public information about this project. And in fact, it was in the newspaper article as well as in the door hangers if you want to learn more to go to that website. And then there was another Herald Mail article today based on feedback they'd received from citizens. I'm not sure how they received the feedback, but they said on Tuesday that they'd received this feedback. So and all of that information was forwarded to the commission today.
Thank you. Even though this presentation is being made during a planning commission, I asked the presenters just to, those of us on the commission will participate just as you all, and we'll ask questions just as you all. So just, there's no precedent or anything like us. We're part of the group, and we appreciate that. I also like to recognize Ray Gray, who's here tonight, Chief Financial Officer for Emeritus, who's a significant part of this planning process too. So, and I'll turn it over now to Mr. Davis, correct? Sharon, do you want to say something first?
I'll give Sean a couple minutes to get full.
Yeah, okay. That'd be fine. Yep, thank you.
I'm Sharon Disk with the Hagerstown Neighborhood Development Partnership, and we've been retained by Meritus to administer the reuse study. And I thought I'd give you an overview of what exactly a reuse study is in this case. The purpose is to identify hurdles to redevelopment, identify realistic opportunities, eliminate time spent chasing elusive, never-going-to-happen prospects, and target those with potential, and provide necessary site data to prospective buyers. In our case, the components of the study included an analysis of existing conditions, opportunities, and constraints, a market analysis, real estate appraisal, environmental assessment, a physical analysis, that would be the civil engineering work, community input meetings, we've had 2, this would be the 3rd, vision and strategies, financial feasibility, and an implementation plan. We had one premise for the study, and that was to identify feasible development assuming no local government funding. Properties in the evaluation include those owned by Meritus as well as some additional properties. And our key constraints have been the topography, the soils, market, adjacent uses, and zoning. We have a draft number 1 concept plan, and that's what we'll be discussing. The scope of work also includes an accommodation for an alternative concept plan, and that's an opportunity to incorporate input from the community. So, Sean, you ready?
Hello? Okay, can everybody see the boards okay? Well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. Well, unfortunately, I think there's... Okay, great. Unfortunately, I don't think everybody's going to have an opportunity to see everything here, but afterwards we'll be delighted to hang around and show you the boards in great detail. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak with you tonight. As Sharon had mentioned, we've gone through a very systematic process in evaluating the former Washington County Hospital site for potential reuse. I was joined with my partner, Joe Cronin, who's with Lippman Frizzell Mitchell. Unfortunately, Joe could not make it tonight. I will try and do my best and address questions and field questions that Joe may be better apt to deal with. I guess we started this process about 9 or 10 months ago, and what we did was the way we spelled out how we wanted to approach this is, as Sharon mentioned, we wanted to do a really complete analysis of the existing property to really understand what's happening on the site and what's happening in the surrounding neighborhood. Spent a lot of time gathering information, reviewing information, master plans, zoning ordinances, subdivision regulations, touring the property time and time again, walking the streets, understanding our, as much as we can about our adjacent neighbors, recognizing that those of you who live adjacent to the site will never be able to attain your knowledge of what's happening on the site, but as best as we could, really trying to gather as much information to understand the site, which will help us in determining what's the best reuse for the site. And so we developed a series of boards to portray that. And for orientation purposes, north is basically straight up. We have, this is the dual highway coming in, turning into Franklin and Washington out. We have Mulberry coming down here. We have Mill, Cannon comes up, and Cannon comes in here. The properties that you see identified in gray here are the subject areas of the study. As mentioned, as Sharon had mentioned, this includes both Meritus-owned property. For example, Meritus owns this piece, these pieces, this piece, these pieces, and several parcels here. but also some adjacent properties that might front onto the Meredith-owned property, such as our neighbors along King Street here, and really the block that you see coming in off Franklin and Washington and Mulberry and Cannon, really the kind of the gateway. So it's a combination of both of those properties. And we've looked at it as really as one piece, as one entity, not in the multiple ownerships that really exist today. Then pulled an aerial photograph, which is a really great opportunity for people to see, this is where I live. It's not a plat like that. This is something that you can really put your arms around and understand, and we constantly are going to refer back to this throughout the presentation, but same scale, same orientation fundamentally for all of the plans. We looked at some of the regulatory constraints on the property, things such as the existing land use. And one of the things that kind of popped out really quickly and very clearly for us was there are a variety of different land uses that surround the study area, both residential, commercial, retail, office, industrial. There's a variety of things. There's not a homogeneous, this is the reuse, or the study area is not in a homogeneous land use zone, which would scream out, okay, well, maybe it should be that land use. We have the yellow indicates residential, the red indicates commercial, the blue indicates more office, the dark purple indicates more industrial related uses, the green indicates green space and parks, the blue down here would indicate public lands right there. So there's a variety of different things, a variety of different land uses that are happening around the property. We looked at the regulatory environment. I'm kind of running out of space here, so I'm just going to double up here. We looked at the regulatory environment, what's happening with the existing zoning, and what's happening with the future land use for the property from a regulatory, from the master planning or general plan standpoint. What are those saying? Trying to get our arms around all of the regulatory constraints, we then focused on some of the natural resource and environmental constraints.
Don, if you want to straight across here, you
Okay, great.
can.
Facing
Facing the other way.
Perfect.
We probably know those better than some.
And from an environmental standpoint, there is nothing happening on the site, on the immediate study, I think, on the immediate study area that's of any concern. We've done historic, archaeological, natural resource, from a wetland standpoint, forest, anything. We've looked at all of those things, but the one thing that really is very, very dramatic on the site, which everybody knows, is the existing topography. And from a topographic standpoint, the lowest elevation is really down here, and that's at about 460 and below. And the highest point on this is right here, which is about 500. So there's a dramatic grade change through this property, which has tremendous impacts on the viable land uses. The steeper a slope is, the more difficult it is to put a big building on it, if you will, because I've got to grade it very, very differently. And so how the topography for the site runs is really, really important. You can obviously see one of the things that's very clear is the old hospital site is really one of the highest points. We all recognize that. It's come up numerous times in our discussions, in our previous discussions. And it's obviously very important, and it slopes down, slopes down, slopes down, really off of this ridge line, if you will. So then, with an understanding of the regulatory environment, with an understanding of the natural resources that are having some of the environmental elements of the site, we really started to evaluate alternative concepts. While we were doing this, my colleague Joe Cronin was doing, both he and Lippman, Frizzell, and Mitchell were really focusing on two very different but very interrelated aspects of this overall study. The first was a market report, an understanding of the existing economic and demographic conditions of the property and the marketplace in which it exists and survives. And the second was an appraisal of the property so that the hospital could understand the value of the property, if you will. So Joe and his colleagues were going through that process simultaneously while we were going through the analysis process. We kind of come to the conclusion at the same time in those first steps. And Joe, his study ultimately came back and said, fundamentally, there are very limited opportunities for reuse of the site. From a residential standpoint, there is a lot of existing housing stock, a lot of existing single-family lots that are in the greater Hagerstown area that are, from a marketing standpoint, are more marketable than would be here at this site. They're in larger communities. They have amenities associated with them. They're part of an existing built environment in which you would be building a house in. He went on to look at the commercial sector from both the commercial office and commercial retail sector. And again, there's very limited opportunity in the downtown area because primarily from the commercial office standpoint, it's a balance of your rental rates downtown and how much new construction costs and what you can get for rent from a new construction. So for example, if I was to build a new office building and it was to cost me, say $100 a foot for the construction, I would have to lease that office space at somewhere in the $18 to $20 per square foot range. Well, the existing rents in this portion of downtown Hagerstown are really in the $13 to $15 range, so I could never really compete with them. And so there are very limited opportunities from the commercial office side. From the commercial retail side, because of what's happening on Route 40 on the dual highway, both to the east and to the west of the city, there's a lot of the retail uses that you would see have really been, have taken ground someplace else within the city. A lot of them are really focused on the 81 corridor and Route 40. We all recognize, that's where a lot of the larger format retailers are. And with them come a lot of the restaurants and a lot of the smaller retailers because that generates traffic. So collectively, Joe was saying, being very pragmatic and being very realistic, which was one of our charges right from the beginning, is don't give us something that's pie in the sky, give us something that's very realistic, that's marketable, that is really, if you will, one of the other parameters we were charged with is, let's look at it as if there was no public subsidies associated with the proposed development. So looking at it in those eyes, through those glasses, we came back in and said, there are limited opportunities for commercial, office, and residential, and potentially even some, if you will, light R&D, which we'll talk about in a second. So with that understanding, we began to evaluate some alternative macro level concepts. And this concept plan, really, summary analysis plan, really identifies a series of 7 opportunities, 8 opportunities. The opportunities are shown in blue, and we'll describe those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8. We'll describe those in greater detail when we get to the first conceptual site plan. And then it talks about the surrounding land uses that are shown here in these waves, the yellow indicating residential, the red indicating commercial, the purple indicating office. We have some steep topography that we're dealing with on the old hospital site. We have existing buildings that are in the fabric of the study area that we've got to respect and understand. We have an opportunity for some identity and gateway for the city coming from that Route 40 side. So with this concept plan in mind, we developed an overall conceptual site plan, the first of 2 alternatives, to really put out there. Step back for 1 second. When we finished the analysis phase, we had our first community input meeting. We presented all of the things that we had found up to fundamentally that last board, if you will. Went out and we gathered, gosh, I can't remember, it was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 comments from the residents that had attended. There was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50 people at the first community input meeting we had. Really great feedback, very, very helpful for us to understand. Again, we could live in Hagerstown for the next 10 years and we're not going to gain the knowledge, have the knowledge of the existing residents, so it was very, very helpful from that standpoint. We then embarked on this, the second phase, which was the conceptual site planning phase, starting with the concept plan and ultimately resulting in this draft conceptual site plan. And basically what we're talking about from those opportunities, from those 8 opportunities, first, coming in off the dual lane, located right here in the median, would be an opportunity for a gateway entrance. Now that gateway entrance could say, welcome to Hagerstown. I could say whatever we wanted to do, but some monumental entrances to differentiate the historic Hagerstown downtown area from the Route 40 area that you've just passed through. Slow down. This is a different environment. It's just a different place. We think that that's a great opportunity that can happen, regardless of whatever concept. It could happen right here in this median. It could actually face both ways. We could, from a sight distance standpoint, when you come down Route 40, there's a really great sight distance, which I saw again tonight. Have to clear out some of the shrub that's been growing here, but there's a spectacular tree in the backdrop that could be really wonderful. But also, when you're leaving town, it could be an identity in that direction as well, which could be really cool. The second opportunity, which was identified as number one there, was this site, which Meredith doesn't have any property in. That's part of the greater study area. And in that site, one of the things that we noticed, there are, for lack of a better term, some missing teeth in the architectural fabric of the streetscape. There are some empty lots. And what we've said is there's an opportunity to come in and fill in those empty lots with some smaller retail uses that could ultimately become the restaurant or a small goods store, a variety of different smaller retailer opportunities. And that the focus of that is to fill in that architectural streetscape, to really define the street edge versus what happens in the back. And the second major opportunity that we saw here was to really take what is right now a number of different parking lots and combine them into what would be fundamentally one parking lot. You get a lot more efficiency in terms of the total number of parking spaces there, which would serve all of the surrounding uses surrounding that parking lot. Right now, there's fences, there's tire stops, there's guardrails, there's a variety of different things that are happening in that parking lot, which really make it very, very inefficient. We believe that there's an opportunity to come back in and fundamentally, if you will, mill it, restripe it as one parking lot. Everybody who has an interest in there would have signed spaces, so they would not lose their interest. But then there would be other spaces that would be just general visitor spaces that anyone could use. Again, because the total number of parking spaces would increase with those efficiencies. The next opportunity, which is really one of the major opportunities, focusing on Washington Street. Meredith owns a piece of property right here that is it's an existing surface parking lot. And then everybody knows the hill that comes up to the sheets right here. When you're coming up that hill, that's basically just existing topography. We're proposing in this particular site right here that we would have a new 45,000 square foot, 3-story office building that would front directly on the road. Behind it could have a small plaza, and then there would be some surface parking here, and then that would be able to take advantage of the existing garage that remains from the bulk of the parking standards. And the great thing is you can actually enter and exit this garage at the lowest level. And so people could literally drive into the garage if there's no space readily available here, walk right out and be right at if you will, the back door of the office building. I think that will create a really nice architectural edge along Washington. It'll help define this. At 3 stories, it would be high enough there would be some view of that. It could be a really, really nice opportunity. Again, when we were looking at it from a market standpoint, we're saying that there's not a great market for office. When we were talking about this, when we talked about it at the first community input meeting, we were thinking of some specific uses. We talked about the Board of Education. We talked maybe about a higher education opportunity, whether it be the community college or a variety of other educational or institutional uses. But that is really one opportunity. The second opportunity for office would be right here. This site was cleared as part of the demolition of the old hospital. Topographically, it slopes from Cannon back down to the garage. We believe we can tuck in some surface parking right here for easy in and out. And this could be a second office, which would be about 44,000 square feet and 2 stories. It'd be a larger format office, so that if I have a user that wants, this floor plate is 15,000 square feet, this floor plate's 22,000 square feet. So I can get a different user in there, if you will, ideally. And then this would also be able to take advantage of the existing parking garage because there are enough spaces to handle both of these uses. And from an accessibility standpoint, not only do you have access here, but there could also be potential access there. Haven't looked at that from a structural engineering standpoint, but you could also have access right here. The next opportunity site was really the 6.5 acre prime Washington County Hospital site. I mean, it's the focus of, I think, a lot of attention. This was the highest point on the site. It's where the The existing hospital was demolished. A lot of the rubble was put back into the site as controlled fill. And what we've looked at from a topographic standpoint is, because there's a rather large slope, everybody understands there's some really spectacular stone retaining walls around the site, there's very limited access up into the site, was preserving a portion of this as a park, taking advantage of some of that grade, taking advantage of some of the views, and then the remaining portion of the site would be potential for residential. Now collectively we've shown townhomes here, here, and here. And I think in this particular instance, in all of the instances, we're showing that they would be 2-car, rear garage townhomes. So they would have a very nice architectural front, very similar to the, our neighbors across King Street here. When you look at those buildings, they're not garage dominated. There are porches, their front doors, a variety of architectural treatments that we would like to mimic, but we would set them off of the road. We have the stone retaining wall, which we've got to be respectful of. There are some grading issues that we would have to address as part of this. That would happen here, and it would also happen here and here. These two sites right here, because of their adjacency to residences behind and their adjacency to residences on both sides, really kind of make absolute sense in my opinion, because of, you know, again, right now a lot of these residents who derive access off this alley really are open and exposed, because right now these are both surface parking lots. So there's really no backyard for those residents. This would really kind of close off the street and provide them with some privacy in both this location and this location. And then the last site here, again, it's an existing surface parking lot, but from a topographic standpoint, that's relatively flat. And if there's an opportunity for some research and development type use, which would be a single-story office building, a lot of times in an R&D type of office building, they'll have the offices up front, and in the back they'll either have lab facilities or potential warehouse facilities. And so what we've done is we've shown this with a front that comes out here to Baltimore and a front that comes out here, and there would be a common service bay here, so that you're getting the maximum amount of architectural treatment along the existing streets as possible. We presented this plan at our second community input meeting. Got a lot of comments. I mean, I think there was a lot of very valid comments from a number of different residents, which I'm sure will continue tonight. But this is one concept plan. This is the culmination of what we had identified as market-driven, realistic, based on the existing site conditions and the existing zoning. We tried to put this in context with some of the other activities or opportunities within Hagerstown, because this is not a site in and of itself. And so we've identified the site is shown here in yellow, and a variety of different other activities that are happening throughout the city. And so these are identified here. I think you all know very well what they are, but we recognize that this is not a site in and of itself. It's not an island. It fits into a fabric, an urban fabric that has existed for a very, very long time. And that's the general presentation. Unless I've missed anything from your perspective, then I'll be delighted to take any and all questions. Sir.
These townhomes that are going to be built, are they going to be built like a company like Ryan and then just put up for sale? What are they going to sell for? Are they going to sell for $100,000, $200,000? I mean, are they subsidized by the government in any kind of way? Will be Section 8 housing in there, or is it just going to be free market? Ryan builds them, Ryan sells them, and these warehouses you're talking about, do you have prospective people that are now looking for office space? Because there's an awful lot of empty warehouses around here already that's empty.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, do you have people that want to rent these places from you?
What's happening, what we're doing right now, is we are out in the community having meetings with a number of different builders and developers that have expressed an interest, or that we know because of our professional backgrounds, and have asked them to come in and talk with a hospital about the potential use of these sites. So for example, let's first take the townhomes. We've looked at these townhomes as they're not Section 8 housing. They are workforce housing. Because they're focused towards an entry-level workforce family. Okay, so this is not a move-up buyer. Okay, this is not somebody who owns a house today and is going to come and move in and move up to this site. Okay, there are plenty of other opportunities for the move-up, for multiple move-up buyers in the greater Hagerstown surrounding area. That from a market appeal standpoint, remember we have about 65 to 70 townhomes here at the end of the day. That is not a huge, if you will, takedown from a home builder's perspective. It's relatively small. It's difficult because of the way the property is physically configured to create a strong sense of an individual identity for a community. I'm going to put, what did I do with the concept plan? Oh, right in front of me. We've got, the bulk of the townhomes are on the old hospital site while trying to preserve some parks and open space system around. But then we have small, in this particular area, we have about 12 of those townhomes on these two pieces. So from a national home builder perspective, that's not a huge critical mass. Okay, 65 to 70 townhomes for them, ideally in a strong market. If they're selling 2 townhomes a month, that's 24 a year. That's 2.5 years worth of supply. Okay, 3 years worth of supply. If they sell 3 a month, they're out of here in 18 months. It compounds. So we believe that this is workforce, entry-level housing. It would be owner-occupied. Okay, it would be for sale, not for rent. We would be selling it as individual units. All right. Now, in terms of the warehouse space, there is a variety of warehouse space along the 81 corridor. We recognize that. A lot of that is large format, very, very high ceilings. It has a very different classification and use and identity for someone who may need something that's smaller, something that's more affordable. And that's really what this is geared at here. It's not trying to hit the same market as some of the larger warehouses that you'll see in the greater Hagerstown area. It's because we're just not going to be able to compete with them. But there is an opportunity. We believe there is an opportunity for maybe some smaller warehousing that people can
All
use.
these homes that will be built will be owned, people will own them. They won't just be rental properties that people won't take care of. So if people want to own them and take care of them, because a lot of times there's a big difference between somebody that owns their home and somebody that rents it. Somebody that rents it, a window gets broke, they don't fix it. The owner will fix the window. And it's not long, if it's all rental, you get another broken windows.
I
I
completely.
just want to say one other thing.
Sure.
When I leave here, I have to leave and go to Frederick to pick up my.
It's a terrible
son.
drive right now.
I'm just saying, at a Greyhound station. And I can't understand why, for the life of me, why I gotta go to Frederick to pick up my son off a Greyhound station. Why isn't there a Greyhound station in Hagerstown? It's like, nobody wants a Greyhound station in Hagerstown? Is that a bad thing to have a Greyhound station?
I don't think so, and I don't know the answer to your question as to why there's not a Greyhound facility here. I will tell you, I think one of the things based on, I've read a lot of the postings that were on the blog site. I've read a number of the articles. There are going to be a variety of different uses that people have for this site. I mean, I think everybody in this room right now could think of a number of different uses for this property. I guess what our charge was from the beginning was provide me with a realistic, marketable, unsubsidized plan. Then we can work from there. I think at the end of the day, in all of my discussions with the hospital representatives who have been phenomenal, I think they're saying, we recognize that this is an important part of the Hagerstown fabric. We'd be interested in looking at alternatives if you have a viable plan in front of you. If you bring us a viable alternative, viable meaning it has a value consideration associated with it, then I think they'd be interested in looking at that regardless of what the use is. So that's going to be kind of an overriding comment, I think, based on what I've read, for many of the comments that may arise tonight. I think the hospital would be delighted to talk about uses, alternative uses for their property, as long as it's a viable use that comes with valuable consideration. That's really it. In terms of the Greyhound, I really don't know.
Well, it's just ironic that I gotta go to Frederick, and if you look in the paper, jobs, all the jobs are in Frederick. You gotta go to Frederick to get a job.
I think one of the market realities of Hagerstown, and I love Hagerstown. I think it's a great city with a lot of great opportunity. Is it just a little too far from Frederick, from the Washington D.C. metropolitan area, or maybe not. Maybe it's not too far. Maybe this is where it needs to be. That's I think the market.
The Golden Triangle, because it sits right off. It's got 81 north and south, 70 east and west, and right in the triangle is Hagerstown. If you can't make it there, you can't make it anywhere. I mean, it's a golden triangle. It's sitting right in the middle of it. North and south traffic and east and west traffic. And there's no reason there shouldn't be growth here.
I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, I think there's plenty of reasons to locate here. At the end of the day, the growth that we're talking about for this is really employment based, and why specific employers are not located, I can't tell you that. I can't tell you that. So, I think you were in the back, sir. And then you, sir.
Could you talk a little bit about the park area? It looks like you have a amphitheater type setup there. My concern is that the north end of Mill Street, you've got that large retaining wall and a fairly steep bank, and you have that listed as green space. But I question whether that can actually be used as green space from a park standpoint. When I think of park, I think of kids running around and stuff like that. And I have kids, so I'm very interested in that. You should talk about use of that, how you envision that being planned, and I have another question after this film.
Okay, great. Well, from this particular standpoint, when we were laying this out, we do have a topographic change that comes from basically a series of plateaus that comes back down. And we recognize that we have the retaining wall right here. We also recognize we have some spectacular views that we'd like to take advantage of. So this was not planned as a truly active playfield, playground park. I think the topography today, whatever this is going to ultimately be developed as, the topography is really, really difficult to have a truly active park. There's opportunities, there's no doubt there's opportunities, but when we were laying this out, we were really assuming that this was going to be more, if you will, the walking trails with the potential amphitheater right here, with the homes in the backdrop, providing, the kind of, if you will, the 24/7 eyes on the park kind of activity, so that, really this isn't isolated in somebody's backyard where a lot of bad things can happen. This is really in somebody's front yard, where you would have some high ground here, where it would slope down. The details of this have not been decided at this point in time. That was just the general concept, is that it's going to be much more of a passive park with an active opportunity and whatnot. You had a second question. Go for it, and then I'll.
My question was, because of the height of the lot, townhomes as are being built now tend to be 3 stories. You envision that being significantly higher than the existing homes, and that being an eyesight problem, an eyesore problem. Has that been considered? What are the thoughts?
The architectural footprints that we were looking at were a combination of 2 and 3 stories. So it wasn't straight 3 stories, it was a combination of 2 and 3 stories. That's a great point in terms of the relationship. We should cut a section through this street and say, okay, here's the existing elevation of the residents that currently exist along King Street. Here's we have the retaining wall. Here's what the potential proposed grade would be on this side. How does that look with a 2-story architecture? How does it look with a 3-story? That's something we'd be delighted to do. Okay, one right behind you first, and then.
You're putting up 2 office buildings with a total of 89,000 square feet for professional use. Are there that many doctors and lawyers waiting on I-70 to come in to Hagerstown, or are they going to be drawing them from places like Robinwood and other areas, and therefore leave other empty buildings? And there's one big building that's empty now, right at the corner of Antietam and Cleveland. Are they going to be drawing people from these other buildings, and therefore there will be empty office buildings in another part of Hagerstown?
I don't know whether they're going to be empty office buildings, but clearly there's an opportunity. There is an opportunity within the city of Hagerstown right now for a variety of different classes of office. So something from the $13 to $15 rent, something from the 15 to 18, something from the 18 to 20. How deep that market is, right now, I can't tell you. We were literally looking at some of these opportunities as single-use opportunities. This, in our opinion, does not make sense from a residential standpoint. We don't see this as being a residential opportunity. We see if there's going to be an employment opportunity here, that this is a great location for it, and this is a great location for it, because they can take advantage of this existing parking structure. We've shown this at 3 stories because we think architecturally that would be very, very nice to have a nice, strong 3-story building along Washington, close up to the road, helping define that streetscape. At the end of the day, we're talking with people right now to understand the viability, in their opinion. We're talking with office developers about the viability, in their opinion, of whether that's 3 stories or 2 stories.
And in the market analysis, what was identified was that this was actually over a 5 to 7 year term, and it most likely the buildings would be built to suit maybe when the tenant, 14 to 50% of the building. This was not speculative.
Thank you.
You mean, in other words, like, we'll build to suit?
Well, alternatively, what happens with a lot of office developers is they'll be out leasing a site, and when they reach a certain lease percentage, in this case about 50%, then they'll go ahead and start construction because they can get the financing for the building. They're not going to try and build it at 20%. They're certainly not going to build it at 0% lease because they're not going to get the financing for it. So at some threshold with their bank, they've reached an agreement at 40, 50, 60% leases, then they'll start construction. Okay, that's what this is. Not a build to suit is, Microsoft and I come to Hagerstown and I want a 45,000 square foot. I build that to suit your needs. So it's a little bit different.
An example would be when Susquehanna was looking to move to a new location. There was not a site in downtown that could have accommodated that, and the bank moved out the dual highway. In this case, what we're saying is we do have sites adjacent to downtown that could accommodate those sites.
And they're great sites. I mean, and you know, taking advantage of a parking structure is a real coup. You know, I'm delighted that that parking structure, personally, I was delighted that parking structure remained, because in a lot of urban office developments, one of the major issues is parking. Well, that's been solved here. I mean, if this was taken down and this was only surface parking, it could only handle a certain amount of office space, which is significantly less than what we're showing. But because you have structured parking, you can take advantage of that with higher intensity 3 and 2 story, you know, 85,000, 87,000 square feet. You can't hear me, can you?
No, we can hear you, but
Okay.
the camera cannot hear these people.
I'm going to say that would be the first time somebody said you couldn't hear me. Yes, sir, you were next. Sure, please.
I think most of you know me. I'm Jerry Kump. I'm a professional engineer, retired. 1960, I worked for Harold Cyber, first job. So I know the area real well. I have 3 properties over here on Baltimore Street. Back in the 60s, the Steins, this was more of a business, industrial type park.
Yes.
And at that time, we had trucking companies in here, the dress factory, the building. Let's see, I got to get oriented here. Coming down Antietam Street, right in here. The building in here was the old Coca-Cola place that had the trucks coming and going all the time. We converted that to I did the engineering on it to a professional building. But anyway, this whole area has slowly moved to commercial and business, and I think it's a good trend. I did the townhouses along here. This I have a little bit of a problem with, putting warehousing. And I'd like to see that tweaked maybe.
Okay.
Because we have plenty of industrial parks in the area around the city. And and when I see warehousing or distribution, I think about trucks. And I really don't think we were trying to get the trucks, I think, out of this end of the town. Now, I was at your July hearing.
Yes, I remember you.
And the one thing that I brought up at that time, and I missed the November hearing, is I was looking at this whole thing, the downtown, Hagerstown, so forth. And I've mentioned even something to the city engineer about it. But on Antietam Street, you're 2 blocks up to where the to where the new library is and so forth. Okay, if Antietam Street would be converted to a one-way street, come through the square, come down this way, take half, just have one-way traffic, sort of like in Winchester, Virginia, other towns have done in their downtown area, and make a walkscape on the south side here, which is where your shade is and everything with trees. Take half the paving, turn it into grass or pave,
Right,
paving,
streetscape.
streetscape it.
Street trees.
You have a direct connection here. And then your plan is wonderful. I think you've blended into the different usages in the area all up through here. Like say anything was just right here. Then that streetscape could be continued down around here, work in some kind of greenscape down to Mill Park here, right up Memorial Boulevard, across from the city's water department. These people know where I'm talking about. Come right back up past, where Potomac Tires are, so forth, tie right into the downtown area again. You could have a walkway, a cycling thing. The mayor, the ex-mayor wanted to put his railroad around or something, but you would have a complete link of seascape looping right around and tying everything together. And I know the area real well, and I've looked at all the different possibilities. I've thought about knocking some houses down here and going right up the alleys. But I think that would really look attractive. So that's my 2 things.
No, I think that's great, and I appreciate it. Again, a lot of, something like this, it's a great idea, but if we just do it in this section,
You're only concerned about this site.
we're a piece.
Yeah.
We're a piece of a larger puzzle.
Right,
comes to
yeah, but
something.
I'm really directing that to these guys.
Yeah.
That it would be nice to try to get some continuity of the whole thing.
Okay. Right before you, there was another gentleman who held his hand up. Not seeing him right now. Yes.
I had a suggestion. You want suggestions, right?
Sure.
All right. I had a suggestion. The parking garage you're talking about, that concrete thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, the concrete garage. I was thinking, move where the police cars are parked at now, where the police station is at now by Roy Rogers. Park those police cars in that, 2 or 3 level parking garage. Park the police cars there. What I'd like to see is then convert that into a passenger train station where you could catch trains to Baltimore, to D.C. Because from what I understand, at one time, that used to be a train station. And people used to catch
Where the police station is now?
Yeah, where the police station is
I'm not
now.
familiar with that.
I'd like to see them move the police station from that location, which is pretty good property downtown, move it to that parking garage you're talking about on King Street and Antietam Street in that area, and because that's right in the area where you're working at. Put the police car, park all the police cars there, free up that big parking space, put a Greyhound bus station there.
Getting back to the Greyhound bus station.
Back to Greyhound, I know. But what I'd like to see is
We can't do it before you have to pick your son up
turn
tonight,
it
though.
right. I know, but I'd like to see. I'd like to see a passenger train where you could catch a train and go to Washington D.C. or Baltimore, Philadelphia, from that location. From what I understand, it used to be a train station.
Okay. No, I mean, my own personal perspective is that's a bigger, broader issue. That's an issue that is way beyond the scope of just this site. It's an issue that's probably worth having a conversation. I bet that the residents who live in this area would probably not like to have all the police cars coming in and out here, but as I said, that's a broader issue. Yeah.
It's a good. It is a parking garage.
Yeah.
You can park every police vehicle in Hagerstown, and use it to park police cars and free up that area, that police station area.
Great.
Move the police station over, incorporate it in this area, and free up that whole, because that's downtown.
Well, one of the things that we had identified on this concept as a 7th opportunity, which is really, really important, is, in my perspective, I think that this site is so close to you know, the happening. I mean, with the upgrade of streetscape in Antietam and in Washington and in Baltimore, to bring people, to get people from here to there is not, in my opinion, that difficult. Since I've been coming to Hagerstown a lot more frequently, I understand in talking with some people that that 2 blocks could just as well be a mile. But maybe it could be a mile because there is, how comfortable are these streetscapes? How comfortable is it to walk there? Is there activity along there and whatnot? So one of the things that we've identified as an opportunity with this site is really to help pull this into downtown. Additional residents that could use existing restaurants, existing services and whatnot in downtown, which I personally consider this to be part of downtown. There was somebody else who had a hand up, and unfortunately, yes, thank you.
It's a pretty comprehensive plan. How long a time span are you talking about for this?
It's easily, as I think as Sharon had mentioned before, it's going to be a 5 to 7 year time
Only?
frame. Yes.
What about places like the Venice Inn, for instance, was just cleared? It's a open vacant lot. Are you actually trying to compete with locations like that for office medical locations, which are more visible?
Not personally familiar with the Venice Inn, but if it was recently just cleared and is available for development, the answer is yes. I mean, at the end of the day, there are probably a number of vacant lots, undeveloped lots, that are opportunities. And they're opportunities for a variety of different people for a variety of different things. And it's, you know, it's based on an offer and, you know, what the owner has interest in doing. There's a variety of things that come into play in terms of which property would move for development. So, but yes, I mean, it would be stupid to stand here and tell you, no, we're not in competition with them. Because that's, if they're looking for an office type of a use, then probably we would be in competition with them. Depending upon the size and the nature of what they could build, we may very well be in competition, direct competition with them. If they go more on the retail side, probably not. We're not going to be in competition. We're not showing any significant retail here. The only retail that's being shown on this plan is the 3 infill sites here, which are, again, those are going to come up when and be redeveloped or be developed when the property owner sees activity here that says, okay, now it's time for me to make an investment. Now it's time for me to do something. Things are happening here that I can take advantage of. So that's the only retail. So if there's other sites within the city, which I'm sure there are plenty of other sites within the city, as there are within any city, that it's all dependent upon the use as to whether we're going to compete with them. But if they're looking for a medical office or an institutional type of a use, or what I would consider to be on the Class A office space side of the equation, yeah, we probably would be competing with them.
Sean, just for your reference, the site he was talking about is just to the east of your gateway point.
Wait, here?
Right below there.
Right below there? Oh, the old this hotel. Yeah, yeah. Yep. Yes, sir. Actually, before you, that's actually pretty interesting, because I would look at this site more as a retail opportunity than an office opportunity, personally, because of its dual highway exposure and access, because it could probably fit a larger format retail use than any site within the study area. I think that may make more sense from a retail opportunity, but it's going to have to be a specific retail opportunity because of all the retail that's happening along the 81 and 40 corridor. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
I was curious with the buildings that would possibly be built, are they going to stay within the architectural style of what is currently in downtown, or if a potential person who wants to build the whole office building wants a modern style office building?
Or contemporary?
Yeah, is it going to still be historically looking to match the rest of downtown, or is it going to be a contemporary office? And with the work level townhomes, are they going to be brick to match the style of the rest of the places around? Because building new brick construction is rather costly to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, first off, when we have talked about this, we have talked about an architectural vernacular that embraces and is similar to the architectural vernacular of Hagerstown. Now, having said that, when you drive any street in Hagerstown, there's a variety of different materials put together in a variety of different ways. We're not talking about something that's out of character with that. So masonry, potentially the hardy plank, potentially even vinyl. I mean, for example, on the townhomes that we're talking about, a combination of masonry and vinyl siding can be very, very good looking and would look almost identical to some of the homes across King Street, okay? And it's much more durable. So the direct answer to your question is we've talked about it. We have not written design guidelines. We have not identified specific, percentages of masonry versus non-masonry, window openings, the shutters, the mullions, all of the stuff that goes into that. But we've talked about it as being in the architectural vernacular of Hagerstown. That can be identified in any land sale contract. So if someone comes and poses a viable opportunity to the hospital and the hospital agrees, that can actually be written into the contract of sale that they're going to follow specific architectural guidelines, such as no contemporary or modern buildings and whatnot. But we just haven't gotten to that point. Yes, ma'am.
The old site where the Washington County Hospital was, have you ever entertained assisted living? To, how shall I say, interchange with more commerce downtown, for people, that's what you're looking for. I'm just thinking, is that feasible on that piece of property?
It's feasible on the piece of property.
Is it called for? Let's put it that way. Is there
a market for it? Is there a market?
Yes.
Is there a market for it? I don't remember specifically the exact whether or not we exactly studied an assisted living facility or a nursing facility or some type of maybe even a senior apartments. I would tend to be more towards the senior apartment side of the equation because they're going to be a lot more active in the community and use it versus,
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, the closer you get to the nursing care, the less active and whatnot that those residents would be in the community. I don't remember specifically whether or not we studied that exact aspect. I can tell you that I've been involved in a number of nursing facilities and assisted living facilities, and the site would definitely work for it. And if there is a nursing facility out there who's interested in looking at this site, we'd be delighted to talk with them. I just can't remember specifically. I mean, the market demographic study was rather thick. And it's got a lot of numbers. So, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Have you guys thought, I totally agree with this gentleman, by the way, the engineer here. I think that's a fantastic idea of incorporating down, because they did all of that work downtown with the streets, with the new library, etc., to bring it back down and kind of curl it around. I think that's a fantastic idea of making it one-way. The lower warehouses that he was talking about, I agree with that as well. We actually own 2 places down in Hagerstown, and we're very close to there.
Okay.
Did you guys ever think about doing any parks or anything like that?
No, and the reason why we were not talking about parks is we were looking for commercially viable uses, something that would be unsubsidized, something that would fit in the fabric. When we looked at this site, we looked at the single-story medical office buildings that are across the street. Because they're medical office buildings, are high-intensity parking. We looked at our industrial neighbor. I believe this is Washington Gas and Electric, or the power. City Light. Thank you. I'm sorry. City Light right here. And we said there's a difference between that. There's a difference between this and this, and this could be a nice bridge for that. It has to be different than what's happening out on 81 in terms of high ceiling, 35-foot ceilings, big warehouse, lots of. It has to be different than that. Maybe there's a niche for that. But no, we didn't look at that area as a park. Yes, sir.
Assuming the plan gets approved, what would be the first steps that you guys would do? Would the office space be the first priority, the residential? What's the commission's thoughts on the next steps, assuming everything goes forward as it's presented right now?
I think it's important to step back. I don't, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sharon, I don't think we're looking for approval of a plan tonight, or quite frankly, maybe ever. I think what we're looking for is, this is the opportunity, which then results in some of the regulatory framework which is set up. Right now, in the zoning, the main hospital portion of the site has been identified as an area to be determined, right? For lack of a better term, the zoning of this property is to be determined. And the other portions of the property are currently zoned. Okay, they have zoning that's associated with them. And we have looked at this somewhat in a somewhat of a vacuum in comparison to this zoning classifications that are there today. We've looked at it and said, what do we believe is marketable? And then ideally, we come back and we say, this is marketable. Now let's go back to the zoning plan and look at the zoning plan and say, does the zoning allow for these types of uses? If it does, great. If it doesn't, we would work with the city, planning commission, city council to ideally modify that zoning to permit the types of uses that we're proposing here. But that's really where it kind of stops as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, until somebody comes in and has a proposal and says, I want to develop an office building here, and Meredith enters into a contract with them, and they develop a site plan, they bring it to the planning commission, and the planning commission approves it, this is going to remain a surface parking lot. So the goal of this study was to evaluate these that would then result in zoning that would then perpetuate the sale of the property to a third party to develop. And there may be, at the end of the day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 builders, developers for the site. I would think from the residential standpoint, it's probably just one builder. But from the office, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe. So our goal is not to get this plan approved. Our goal is to get reaction and feedback from this plan. A lot of things will come from this discussion, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, my only concern still remains the usable green space. I just look at the plan and say, I don't know that that's really usable.
And I'm not going to argue with you in terms of this for recreational purposes. But one of the great things about an aerial photograph is it shows context. And it shows context of this in relationship to this, which is a spectacular park in my opinion. It's a really, really cool park. Okay? There are opportunities for active recreation right here. How much active recreation do we need right here to complement that? Connections, opportunities for connections between one and the other, opportunities from the streetscape to connect to other things, that's great. I mean, those are all things, but I just throw that out because I looked at this and I say, and having driven around, that's a really cool park, and I like it.
I agree with that.
So, other questions and comments? I'm here all night. Yes, ma'am.
When you say opportunities and the kind of market for, amplify that for the housing on the hospital property, and are you going to treat it the same as you are those office buildings if you have people that are interested in workforce housing, not in developing it? There's always opportunities for development. What are the opportunities that you have people out there in the workforce that are interested in living there in those townhouses? And I say that from someone who lives in the neighborhood and has, we can go find you workforce housing and homeowners moving out of our neighborhood, not moving in.
And I remember you from our first meeting back in July. And thank you very much for being here again. And I think no, you have. I think the reality is I would ask you, why are people moving out of the workforce housing that they're in right now? Is it because of the age of the house, the inability to get a loan to rehab the facility? There's a variety of different things why people come and go, okay? What we're talking about here in this particular instance is new housing, okay? That's different. Now, in terms of is there a market for workforce housing, I think one thing that the market study pretty surely said is that is the only market for housing on the site. It really is the only market.
I agree with you there.
And so if we're looking at residential, then that is probably the most appropriate residential to look for.
Why are you looking only at residential?
we're not looking only at residential. We've shown offices, we've shown warehouses. Because topographically, it's a lot easier to put a very small footprint and take advantage of those existing topographic conditions than a big box that has no parking.
Why does it have to have anything on it?
Again, I've seen all of the news articles regarding the potential use of that as a park. And I'd suggest to you, if you're able to pull together a viable program, offer, I'm sure that the hospital would look at that and say, and evaluate, you know, okay, what's the valuable consideration? They can't, you know, I'm speaking for them, and please throw me out if I'm speaking wrong. They can't give the property away. They have a responsibility to the hospital for the, you know, for a variety of different reasons. So, but that doesn't mean they're asking for top dollar for that. There's a big difference between here and there. I was telling Sharon a great example. We were working with Bethlehem Steel on the disposition of a piece of property that they owned in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And it was a golf course, and we did an evaluation of the highest and best use of the property and determined that the vast majority of it was in a floodplain. And so it could only ever be used for a golf course. We could never build homes there. It was in a residential neighborhood. And so we determined that it was going to be a golf course, and then we went out to the marketplace, and we offered this. And we entertained multiple proposals from a variety of different people. They did not take the highest offer. In fact, they took the lowest offer. But the lowest offer, cash offer, came with a lot of valuable consideration that was a cash equivalent, okay? There was access that they could provide to property that would be developed that the steel company still owned. There was sewer and water. There's a variety of things that determine consideration and what's valuable consideration. So I would offer to anybody in the audience that if you have a viable proposal, I'm sure that the hospital would entertain it and talk with you. Okay.
I think it's important to remember that this is a reuse study that's being conducted on behalf of Meredith, the property owner. You cannot, as a property owner, come to the city and say, buy my land and operate a park and maintain it in perpetuity.
Good point.
Because I say so. So if the community wants to see a public use like that, then that's something for the entire community represented by the elected officials to determine.
That's a great point. Thank you.
I said any two, but I just wanted to mention this. This is for the Planning Commission, because I know you're not going to maybe be around 6 months from now or whatever. But when workforce housing, Hamilton Park across from North High, back in the early 40s, that's what that was. My parents moved in there in 1942. They said it was never going to work. Most of them were just block houses, and they had no gingerbread. They didn't finish off the top floors, and they left it up to the people to be able to spend money and everything. And now, with the townhouses there, I don't think there's anything any more boring than just seeing boom, 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 you know, townhouses in a row. I would like to see some variety. Of course, that'd be up to a future site plan that comes in the door here. Now, I did the old Hagerstown High School site, and we did 0 lot lines. We offset houses, did little, you know, little rooms here and there and everything else. You know what I'm talking about. And I think that looks real attractive compared to bump, 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 you know, just blocks of townhouses. And,
different materials.
So I'm just putting that out that I'd rather see maybe fewer houses there, a little bit more space, lots around them and so forth, and some versatility in the future for people to maybe go in and stay there and develop it and make the house nicer, you know, with their own income.
And please recognize, I think it's important for everybody to recognize, what we're showing on this is what we believe to be a viable market for office, for the residential, for the R&D. A builder may come in for the residential and say, I want a more narrow townhome, or I want a wider townhome, depending upon their market, or this is the right townhome, but I need a little bit more open space, or I don't need as much open space. This is a general plan. This is not a site-specific plan that's being brought before you for site plan approval. We believe that this is an appropriate residential use. I agree with you 100%. Staggering the heights of building, 2 and 3 stories, provides versatility. Staggering the front setback in and out. Architectural materials, bay windows, bay box windows, porches. I mean, all of it comes into the vernacular of what's ultimately developed. I mean, my own personal opinion, it's site planning, architecture, landscape architecture, and signage are the 4 elements of a quality built environment. And all of them are going to play in every one of these pieces. So, yes, ma'am.
I just want one part of my question. Plus, I don't see the 2 options as a public Hagerstown to buy it and put a public park there. It's not, I don't see, or to put 69 townhomes. And I know that's a flexible number and all that. But what I want to have answered is it going to be done as you have like a couple of townhomes sold? Are you just going to put up 2 townhomes? Are you going to put up these townhomes and then we're not going to sell them and voila?
Okay. You did ask that in the beginning.
I did ask that.
No, I apologize. That was my mistake for not answering that.
It's okay.
Ideally, what this would be, it would be sold to a national builder or a regional builder, okay, in a takedown contract, which which means they take down a certain number of homes at a given time. They put a deposit down. They take them down, but when they build the homes, they don't build a single townhome at a time.
No, I didn't mean, I meant.
A stick, what we call a stick of townhomes.
Okay.
This is a stick of townhomes. It has 5 townhomes in it.
Okay, they wouldn't build 5 townhomes until those 5 townhomes were built.
No, what happens is when the home builder takes in 3 contracts, or 30% or 50% of the stick, then he goes out and builds the stick. And then when he's doing that, he's hopefully selling the remaining 2 or 3.
And if he doesn't, then he doesn't build another stick?
Possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah. But it's
There's no guarantees on this.
No. There's no guarantees in life. I mean, I think we just experienced 5 years of the worst housing industry in the face of the earth. And I mean, I understand what's happened not only in Hagerstown, but in every other part of this country when it comes to housing. Builders are a lot smarter now, primarily because banks are making them be a lot smarter. They can't put down big deposits. They can't have big takedowns. And again, this is relatively, from a national or regional builder, 65 to 70 homes is really, really small. That's not a big project. That's something that they look at in a 2 to 3 year inventory. Okay, great. I've got enough inventory there to maintain the sales staff, the construction superintendent. Okay, I got it. So I don't know any better way to answer your question. I can't guarantee you that they're going to.
Right.
But I can also tell you that from my perspective, dealing in this industry, that nobody's going to come in and put a contract on this and put money down on this unless they believe they can build it. Because they're going to have to put in all the infrastructure. They're going to have to put the roads and the sewer and the water and do the grading and do a variety of other things to get it right. You don't spend that kind of money unless you think you're going to be able to sell some homes. Okay.
And they'll have to do all that first.
Yeah.
They'll have to do all the roads and all the pipes and everything else before that first stick goes in, so.
Yep.
The advantage is that there's a lot of sewer capacity.
Already there.
All the hospital that's available.
And the public roads are right there.
Yes. And that's one of the beauties of infill development. Other questions?
I want to ask the commission if they've.
I apologize for having.
That's okay. No, I think it's important, and I really appreciate all the input, all of it. It's very good. It's also exciting that everybody's here to listen to this and to be able to do that. I just though want to turn to the commission and see if they maybe not have questions, although they might, but particularly if they got any input. So, does anybody want to comment on it?
Yeah, just one comment. The whole hospital site itself, where the building was, has been talked about being a heritage type park, which would be no townhouses or anything built there, which I think could possibly be a very attractive element to the whole surrounding area.
No doubt.
And not necessarily develop it into townhouses, but to keep it as open space, and there's some merit to having a heritage park there, I think.
And again, I'm not going to argue with you at all. I think that that's a very, very viable use for that site. I think if there's an opportunity to come to the property owner and say, here's Here's valuable consideration, whatever that may be. Not just cash, but here's valuable consideration.
Somebody has to pay for it, though.
Exactly. That's the issue, and I think as Sharon said, the property owner can't come to the city and say, buy my property and make it a park, and it doesn't happen either way, really. So, but I'm not going to argue with you at all in terms of the use of that property. Sir.
Ron?
Same question. Historic value of it, of where the townhomes are going.
Of course, we're not looking at site plans. We're looking at this more as conceptual, and I think we all realize that. I think that's a pretty good use of the land. I particularly like the opportunity for jobs. And there's more ample opportunities for jobs on that land than, not as much as before, but some of the earlier concepts. And I think in this county, in this neck of the woods, we need to think of utilizing our infrastructure, already built out roads, already water and sewer, everything else, to the maximum to generate jobs for our citizens now, as well as those that might be attracted to this area. So for all those reasons, I'm quite excited about the possibilities here.
Good. And I can tell you that the property owner is doing everything they can to move that along in terms of discussions with potential developers and builders to see their interest in the property.
Is there anybody else at all that want to ask questions and provide input? This is a great opportunity, and I know everybody's listening.
Sure. It's good to see you again.
The parking deck is an important part of this plan. Parking decks are expensive to build, and when they become non-functional, they're expensive to replace.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when that happens, where all these cars are going to park in that, which would normally park in that parking deck, going to park in the neighborhood?
Assuming that we would have to replace the parking garage.
Who would replace it?
Okay, great question. The owners of the property that are, the way I would envision it, just real quickly, again, forgive me for, the way I would envision it is that this would probably be a ownership interest, if you will, a condominium between this owner and this owner. Let's assume that these are two separate developers that develop two separate office buildings. They would own this in common as one owner, and that they would be responsible for the maintenance of it. It's just like any common area maintenance charge in an office building. It's just as if this was a hallway that needed to be cleaned out every night in an office building. They own it collectively. It's maintained collectively. If they have to replace it at some point, they would obviously have to create a program where, I don't know whether or not they're leasing, a parking field in here that may not be used right now and running a shuttle back and forth while this is being demolished and reconstructed. But they would have to reconstruct it. They couldn't tear this down and then say, okay, we have a new tenant coming in here, and city, please give me this use and occupancy permit for this tenant. And the city turns around and says, you don't have adequate parking for that tenant. That's just the reality of it, so no, you don't get it. So it's in their personal interest to maintain this. And it's a poured-in-place concrete structure. That is not a tilt-up. I mean, I'm sure from a construction standpoint, there's a variety, parking structures are being developed or built in a variety of different ways. What we call the tilt-up, where you'll see the double T's coming down the highway that are tilted, and they're 15 feet long and 60 feet, or 15 feet wide and 60 feet long, and they take a crane and they pull them off there and they plop them down onto the deck, and boom, that's it. They throw some. That's not what this is. This is a poured-in-place concrete structure. It's going to be around for a while. Because, again, the other nice thing about that parking structure is, it was this visitor parking, or was this?
It was visitor and employee.
Okay. It was probably not a high turnover, okay, like a retail, like a mall, okay, or like a downtown garage where it may have a lot of turnover. So I don't think it's a high use, but the direct answer, if something happens to this, the owners would have to find an alternative suitable site for their employees. Otherwise, they would not be able to function. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
People have other comments from the audience or people who are watching from home. you can still respond to us either through Meredith's WordPress site, which is WashingtonCountyHospitalSite.wordpress.com, or you could email the city at planning@hagerstownmd.org, or you could probably interact with the city's Facebook page, or even, heaven forbid, you could tweet, I suppose. But there's still opportunities because the Meredith really wants input on this, and the city, of course, is very interested to hear what the citizens have to say.
Great.
We do want to thank you for your comments tonight. We've had a number of visiting sessions here over the last several months in order to gather community input as we try to make a viable use for this site, some sort of mixed use, which is not a burden to the city to carry, but actually provides employment and opportunity for living. And we are meeting with developers in the coming weeks, and your comments will be used when we meet with them. So if you have any other thoughts, please don't hesitate to let us know. Thank you all very much.